He talks and representatives walk. Another round of budget brinkmanship in Washington. Saber rattling over Kosovo. The U.S. gears up for possible airstrikes in Serbia. And the Wall Street slump, threatening to put many brokers out of commission.
This is the CBS Evening News with Paula Zahn.
Good evening on this Western edition. With federal coffers running on almost empty, congressional and White House negotiators are working through the weekend to agree on massive spending bills. Jonathan Freed tells us what the members want most of all is to clear the decks for next month's crucial midterm elections.
Budget negotiators met on Capitol Hill to try and resolve the political differences that are holding up government funding for the new fiscal year. Since those discussions were happening behind closed doors, lawmakers stuck in town found ways to keep the debate going.
I'm not Chiquita Banana, but I'm here to say we shouldn't be debating this bill today.
But the mood was more serious among congressional leaders.
So far, so good.
Who are battling for their agenda. The parties are still hung up over education. President Clinton pushed again for more money.
We must use this moment of good fortune to make an historic investment in the quality of our public schools. And we've still got a few days to do it.
That didn't set well with the majority leader.
I about had it on this issue.
This is a crisis, and it's an outrage.
Democrats are pushing for more than $6 billion to build more schools and hire 100,000 new teachers. They accuse the GOP of not caring.
They got time for all kinds of bills they want that mean nothing to the future of this country. We want them to stay here and deal with our children and do something for education.
The only difference between us on education is, do the bureaucrats in Washington control and run it, the White House and his types up here, or do the people at the local level?
Republicans ended their day with a pep rally on the steps of the Capitol, challenging the president to get serious about cutting a budget deal.
We're staying in session until the work is done.
But only the budget negotiators are working here this weekend. The rest of Congress is heading home to get in some Columbus Day campaigning. They'll be back on Monday in time to extend emergency funding to keep the government running, or, finally, to pass the new budget. Jonathan Freed, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
The House Ethics Committee today dropped its remaining charges against Speaker Newt Gingrich. The committee said he violated House rules by using a political consultant to draft the legislative agenda. But the matter will be dropped because there's no evidence the violations are continuing. Long-term advisor to presidents Clark Clifford died today. He was 91. Clifford served 4 Democratic presidents, starting with Harry Truman. He was Lyndon Johnson's defense secretary at the height of the Vietnam War. His final years were tarnished by involvement in a banking scandal. Overseas, indications tonight that NATO airstrikes on Serb forces in separatist Kosovo province may be averted. Serb officials say President Slobodan Milosevic is now willing to comply with all NATO demands. 6 B-52 bombers are flying from the U.S. to Britain tonight in case attacks are ordered. But Alan Pizzi tells us a top U.S. envoy is still relying on shuttle diplomacy.
It may or may not be progress, but as long as the motorcades are here, the bombs are not. U.S. Ambassador Richard Holbrooke took a break from his marathon negotiations with Serb leader Slobodan Milosevic today to get the view from Kosovo. Holbrooke's delegation met ethnic Albanian political leaders, including Ibrahim Rugova.
An important, moderate leadership in a situation where all sides increasingly have resorted to violence.
The violence has tapered off. Kosovo Liberation Army guerrillas have declared a unilateral ceasefire, and there have been few reports of any shooting incidents. But Serb forces still have not withdrawn from Kosovo to the extent demanded by the UN resolution that forms the basis for Holbrooke's diplomatic mission. Nor are ethnic Albanian refugees feeling secure enough to return home and rebuild. As long as the Serb authorities do not meet those and other conditions, they risk NATO airstrikes. Nobody, Holbrooke insisted, wants to resort to bombing.
We're here to find a totally viable, credible, verifiable, and irreversible compliance with the UN resolution.
And is there any progress?
The question we never answer, sorry.
It wasn't much as sound bites go, but the locals who gathered to watch the show liked it.
Holbrooke also seems to have said some things that appeal to the Serb authorities. Late tonight, the official government news agency here reported that all 6 UN conditions will be met by the Serbs. Alan Pizzi, CBS News, Pristina.
On Wall Street this week, the jitters got so bad it seemed to be on the San Andreas Fault. The Dow traded up and down. The dollar plummeted, and one investment house predicted U.S. recession. The first victims, as Elizabeth Caledon reports, may be the traders themselves.
The Wall Street workforce survived another week of the market's ups and downs, only to face similar uncertainty about their own jobs.
With the market we're in, potential fallout in all the firms.
Stock values have plunged, and the Dow is down 16% since its July high. It all adds up to lost revenue for brokerage houses, and many are talking layoffs.
The emotion of, the last 3 or 4 months has been substantially changed, and therefore we're going to see fairly significant, I think, headcount reductions.
The big firms may take the biggest hit. Though none will comment publicly, Merrill Lynch is expected to cut more than 1,000 jobs next week. Solomon Smith Barney is looking to trim its staff by 5%, and Bankers Trust employees face layoffs too. In addition to layoffs, some firms are reportedly canceling their famously lavish holiday parties. Annual bonuses are expected to be slashed 40 to 50%, and hiring has ground to a halt.
The outlook for employment is probably the worst that it's been in a decade almost.
At Jeremy's Ale House on Wall Street, traders accustomed to risky business were taking news of potential layoffs in stride.
When the tide goes down, every boat goes down with it.
The good news, some predict, is that the tide will rise again. With stock prices low and falling, the hope is that bargain shoppers will come to the rescue, and any job loss on Wall Street will be temporary. Elizabeth Caledon, CBS News, New York.
And still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News, beaten, burned, and left to die. The latest on a hate crime the president calls horrifying. Plus, anti-racist good intentions put to the test. And a different side of Attorney General Janet Reno.
Hi, Tom Bodette. Well, this is what I looked like back when I was new. And this is a new room at Motel 6. When I was new, a new room at Motel 6. Cute, huh? I'm Tom Bodette, and we'll leave the light on for you.
We just got the new Washington Mutuals in.
No way!
Check out this 98 Scott Musmansky.
Awesome.
Closed 16 home loans in 1 day.
Whoa, cool. Is that what I think it is?
Yep, a Dolores Hagen's Teller rookie card.
How much is that?
A Hagen's rookie? You better start saving your lunch money, kid.
Let Washington Mutual make a fan out of you. Washington Mutual. Join the club.
To show off their renovated rooms, Motel 6 is doing its first big special effects commercial ever. Here goes. Cool. I'm Tom Bodette, and we'll leave the light on for you.
President Clinton today condemned the senseless beating of a gay student in Wyoming, comparing it to the dragging death of a black man in Texas. Mr. Clinton said an act of evil like this is not what our country is all about. Jeffrey Kaufman has the latest on the hate crime.
2 people passing this fence on Wednesday thought they were looking at a scarecrow. When they looked closer, they realized it was the savagely beaten body of a young man who had been tied to the fence and left to die in the cold. The victim, 22-year-old Matthew Shepard, a student at the University of Wyoming. Police say he was attacked because he's gay.
He's just a very small person that has a big heart and a very large mind and soul within him that somebody chose to try to beat out of him and destroy.
2 young men have been arrested and charged with attempted first-degree murder. 2 women have also been arrested as accessories. Shepard's attackers are accused of torturing him and, according to the affidavit filed in court, attempting to kill their victim by beating him with the butt of a pistol. It goes on to say the victim was begging for his life.
His head trauma consisted of a massive blow to the right side of his head. It fractured his skull from behind his head in a horizontal fashion to in front of his right ear.
Christine Quinn has been tracking the rise of anti-gay violence across America. She blames religious and political leaders for encouraging intolerance.
And where does that sentiment go? You don't have to be a rocket scientist. It goes to people feeling that they can act their hatred out violently. And that's exactly what happened in Wyoming.
Shepard is in the intensive care ward of this Colorado hospital, where he remains unconscious and in critical condition. Jeffrey Kaufman, CBS News, New York.
For decades, psychologists have tried to understand the uglier side of the human mind, the side of hate and prejudice. Now, researchers have developed a new test to find out what motivates those feelings. And the findings, as Randall Pinkston reports, may surprise you.
Yale University, an Ivy League institution, a liberal arts bastion, a biased student body.
You find yourself reflecting on it and realizing that you really do have these feelings that you've never known about. And that
Freshman Russell Greenberg and the rest of his class were part of an unusual orientation this year. Students were given a test designed to reveal subconscious prejudice. Psychology professor Mazarin Banaji developed the test with a colleague at the University of Washington for use in academic research.
We hope that the test will show that the kind of world in which a person lives can affect their implicit or automatic associations.
Professor Banaji believes, although we may not intend to, we all make associations based on cultural influences. Prejudices of age, race, or gender are often unconscious because they are things we sometimes don't want to admit, even to ourselves. There are 4 versions of the implicit association test available on the internet. In the racial test, the participant selects names associated with being black and those associated with being white. Then the participant groups the names with good qualities and bad qualities. 90% of those who take the test show some bias.
Does that mean that I hate myself? And
Aisha Gale was shocked to discover she was biased against African Americans.
We can change people's conscious beliefs by education in the normal sense, classroom education and so on. But that won't necessarily remove the associations that have been formed by seeing what there is out there in the world.
Developers of the test warn it should not be used to root out people with biases, but it can be used by anyone to determine unconscious attitudes. And having an unconscious bias does not make someone prejudiced or dictate their behavior. It is the conscious choice that determines a person's actions. Randall Pinkston, CBS News, New York.
Just ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, the big sales pitch for Japan's new, very small car.
Have you seen these islands? Have you seen the beauty of this land? Have you seen the ocean? Miles and miles of crystal deep blue seas. You will love these islands. Nothing in the world can compare. This is aloha. This is aloha. This is aloha. This land of Hawaii.
You can't control Mother Nature. Experts report that weather patterns are changing fast, making it harder for anyone to say, a flood can't happen to me. In fact, in the last few years, floods have hit all 50 states. Thousands of victims learned too late that homeowners insurance doesn't cover floods, but national flood insurance does. Even weather experts can't outsmart Mother Nature. So call your insurance agent, or for free information, call this number now.
A look at Russia in crisis. Americans helping their loved ones thousands of miles away. Plus the effects on businesses worldwide. This Sunday morning.
Today's budget talks on Capitol Hill are also dealing with badly needed financing for the International Monetary Fund. Republican leaders said agreement is near on releasing $18 billion to help the IMF rescue battered world economies. The global economic crisis has been fueled in part by the turmoil and downsizing in Japan. Barry Peterson shows us how Japanese automakers are hoping a new design will hold the driver's key to recovery.
With the rock stars flared, Japanese carmakers unveiled their new recession busters this week. Small is better, and small could mean big sales.
I hope so.
Japan's economic downfall sent car sales slumping. People no longer pay high to drive glitzy. So how about under $4,000? Less cost means more buyers, they hope.
Because it's cheap, but it's still quality is pretty much high. I think it's really good for the economy too.
This is not exactly a car designed for excitement, and that, say Japanese car makers, is precisely the point. They wanted something kinder and gentler. Translation, a car they can market to women. A market with vast potential, women in the workforce, or wives looking for second cars.
I live in Tokyo, in the middle of Tokyo, so if I were to buy a car, I'd prefer a small car.
And trust the Japanese to dream up a few irresistible extras, like an antibacterial steering wheel. Well, maybe they missed on this one. It's germ-free, no bacteria. Would that be something that you would like to know about a car?
Not really.
Not really. New Pajero Mini. The cars and the ads are off and running this weekend. Car makers can only hope their gamble to get out of the doldrums really takes off. Barry Peterson, CBS News, Tokyo.
Well, the ads will certainly get your attention. Coming up next on tonight's CBS Evening News, Attorney General Janet Reno on the White House investigation and on crime in schools. And later, German moviegoers get their first look at Saving Private Ryan.
Thanks, Shirley. You know, Tony, I've been thinking about life insurance again. We pay more for this coffee than we would for extra coverage.
She's right. You know, you can get good life insurance for 39 cents a day.
Probably from someone I never heard of.
Mutual of Omaha. United of Omaha, one of the Mutual of Omaha companies, has a plan where your payments never go up and your benefits never go down.
Good company. But I bet you still have to take a physical.
No. And before you ask, you won't be turned down and your coverage can't be canceled.
How much? And don't talk to me in units.
No units. With this, you know what you're getting. Up to $20,000 worth of coverage.
What, do you work for him, Cheryl?
Actually, we bought the plan before Harry passed away. My husband had this great gift for always listening to me.
Smart guy, huh, Tony?
Call 1-800-428-0400 for your free information. That's 1-800-428-0400. Call now, 1-800-428-0400.
Ah, the good old days of supermarket shopping. When nothing stood between you and your next meal. Nothing. But today, there are materials that help lock out harmful contaminants and reduce spoilage, keeping us safe and the food we eat fresh. Plastics make it possible. So now, the rest is history.
The jobs of tomorrow are here. Thousands of them, waiting to be filled. But you have to know the fields they're in, and you have to have what it takes to master those fields. Because you can't get the jobs of tomorrow until you get the skills of today. Start by calling ITT Technical Institute. We'll send you an informative brochure on tomorrow's careers and what it takes to get them. Call 1-800-ITT-TECH.
The House votes for impeachment inquiry. What does it mean for Clinton? How will he fight it? Senate Majority Leader Trent Lott and White House Special Counsel Greg Craig face the nation Sunday.
The ongoing saga of the White House under fire finds Attorney General Janet Reno in the spotlight. Not only is she figuring out what role to play in the impeachment process, she is also fielding questions from President Clinton's personal lawyer about Kenneth Starr's request last January for permission to investigate the Lewinsky affair. That's tonight's One-on-One, a talk with Janet Reno, tight-lipped about the investigation, passionate about another issue close to her heart.
I think our responsibility is to address any issue that affects the institution of the presidency, the institution of the presidency in the constitutional setting.
I know you will not and cannot talk about the independent counsel, but the president and attorneys are now questioning the scope of your initial investigation when you decided to call upon an independent counsel. Can you weigh in on that at all?
We're reviewing it to see what would be appropriate to say.
Can you tell us what it means?
No. I still, when people say the Attorney General, I still can't believe it.
After all these years. With all of Washington caught up in the White House scandal and waiting anxiously to see how and if Janet Reno will defend the president, there's very little time to talk about anything else. But when it involves children, she makes time. Next week, she'll participate in a White House summit on safe schools.
There is so much that remains to be done. Youth violence is down and youth victimization is down, but it's still too high. We still have too many children who are acting out in other ways or are at risk.
What kind of Justice Department programs could actually reach these kids and really change the environment in which some of these kids are growing up?
One of the most interesting things that we're trying to do is to develop community initiatives. The communities of America understand their needs and resources better than we do in Washington. It will vary from community to community and school to school. Every now and then, as these months and years have gone by that I've been Attorney General, I've worried, is it just talk? Is it working? I go to Boston and I see these ideas in place. I see real enforcement efforts against guns in the hands of kids, but then I see prevention efforts, and it's balanced and it's working, and youth homicide is down in the city.
As I hear your passion in your voice when you talk about these issues, it seems to me you really are a social worker at heart, are you?
My mother once gave a speech to the Florida Association of Social Workers describing all that social workers had done during the Depression. And she concluded by saying, and she thought that social workers were but little lower than the angels. I think a social worker who cares is one of the great institutions in this country, and I'm proud to even be slightly equated to a social worker.
And as I understand it, you quietly go around the public schools in the Washington, D.C. area and read to young children. What is the power of the connection you've developed with these young people?
In Miami, I used to go to a different public school on the average of once a week, anywhere from a third grader to senior high. And I found that students ask the most wonderful questions, particularly the younger ones have such unvarnished questions. They ask what's in their mind and what's in their heart. I think I learned a lot from children. I learned a lot about how to be yourself and not put on airs, because children are pretty good at that, and they can see through phonies, and it's rather chastening to be told by an 8th grader, you take yourself too seriously.
Do you take that seriously when they tell you that?
Yes. One told me that a long time ago, and I've tried every way I know how not to take myself too seriously.
Janet Reno's fainting spell in church 2 weekends ago prompted some speculation about her health, but she told me her doctors say she's just fine.
Walk right in, sit right down. Daddy, let your mind roll on.
Remember when folk songs were heard all across America?
Oh, no, don't let the rain come down.
At last, you could get all your favorite folk songs in one complete collection. The Time Life Treasury of Folk Music.
Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. Hang down your head and cry. Well, hang down your head.
You'll hear songs that bring back memories.
So here we are in the Tijuana.
Songs that touch your heart.
We'll sing in the sunshine. We'll laugh every day.
Songs that will live forever.
Michael row the boat ashore. Hallelujah.
The Time Life Treasury of Folk Music. 30 classic songs that take you back to a very special time.
Where have all the flowers gone? Long time past.
You'll hear legendary artists like the Kingston Trio and Harry Belafonte.
Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and we walk.
So come and sing along.
I had a hammer my hammer in the morning.
You'll cherish these songs forever.
Breeze swaying in the summer breeze, showing off
The Time Life Treasury of Folk Music is not in stores, so please call now.
To order Treasury of Folk, call 1-800-325-4343. That's 1-800-325-4343. Or send $19.99 for 2 cassettes or $24.99 for 2 CDs plus $4.50 shipping and handling to Treasury of Folk, Department 1, Richmond, Virginia. Or call 1-800-325-4343.
In a good year, these apples would be on their way to Japan. Not this year.
We're worried in Washington and sleepless in Seattle because we're feeling the effects of the Asian downturn.
Call it the Asian flu, but it's making U.S. companies sick. How sick? An Eye on America special series begins Monday on the CBS Evening News.
When Saving Private Ryan opened last summer, American moviegoers were shocked by its graphic depiction of soldiers in combat. Mark Phillips tells us the film evoked even more intense emotions when it opened tonight in Germany.
In Germany, it's called The Soldier James Ryan. The film, which so realistically depicts the Allied landing on D-Day, opened in Germany this weekend. Any film about the Second World War has particular poignancy in Germany, reawakening feelings of guilt and loss and illuminating the darkest moments in its history. A film this realistic was bound to have a profound effect, especially for veterans like Ernst Meyer, who's old enough to have served in the wartime Wehrmacht. Too much blood, he says, too much fighting, too much emotion. It touched me a lot. The Germans have always had difficulty coming to terms with D-Day, let alone the rest of the war. Propaganda newsreels at the time actually depicted the Allied landing as a failure. The movie, with its realistic battle scenes, is a reminder of what really happened, the hell and the heroism of war. In Germany, it also has a perhaps unintentional irony. The heroes here, although American, are dubbed into German. Private Ryan provides a history lesson that may be useful to those too young to remember. Germany's strong post-war anti-militarist culture has lately been threatened by a rise in right-wing neo-Nazism.
Thank goodness I did have to take part in it. And it's an appeal to humanity and to politicians and to all peoples. Avoid war at all cost.
Private Ryan is a difficult film to watch everywhere, but perhaps in Germany, it's most difficult of all. Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.
And that is the news for tonight. Tomorrow on the CBS Evening News, the other side of the Balkan crisis. New U.S. troops on their way to Bosnia. Also, tomorrow on Sunday morning, remembering Route 66. Then on Face the Nation, the impeachment inquiry. I'm Paula Zahn, CBS News in New York. Have a great weekend. Thanks for joining us.
CBS.com for news 24 hours a day. Experience CBS News.
In a good year, these apples would be on their way to Japan. Not this year. How the Asian flu is making U.S. companies sick. Eye on America.